Hi again, this is Master Peter Brusso, and I'm with Gary Eubanks. Welcome to our self-defense weapons site podcast. Gary, how you doing?
I'm doing outstanding. Thank you, Peter.
Well, good. I asked you on the show. I'm trying to get. I swore I would do this several years ago. Was to start my podcasting on the self-defense weapon, and it never got started. And so this year I said, "That's it. We're doing this." And you're number two up
Sure.
on the list here. Uh,
Thank
welcome to being the guinea pig, I guess. But now I wanted to ask you. This is a very unique situation. A lot of people come to the self-defense weapon or the defender because they're a martial artist in some fashion. I guess there's probably a mix of 50-50, I think anyway. And you're definitely, as you said, hey, you're just a regular guy. So how did you find the defender? Let's ask that first. How did you find us?
Well, I did see that movie, and I laughed about it, and that got me to thinking about it. Honestly, after I saw the movie about the goats, of a
Right.
bizarre movie. What was the name of the movie?
The men who stare at goats.
Men Who Stare at Goats. Yeah, I saw that movie, and that really got me looking at that. And I had been assaulted numerous times and had wished I had had something like that. So I Googled it, and there I went.
Well, that's cool. I don't know if you know this, but George Clooney plays me in real life in that movie.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
I did some research on that and was quite fascinated with the story behind the Defender.
I can remember sitting in the premiere and people laughing at everything, and I'm going, "What are they laughing for? This is real stuff. It's true." They didn't
Yeah,
believe it.
I
It's
know.
pretty,
It
pretty,
makes me want to watch the movie again.
pretty bizarre on my side of the life. So, okay, so you saw it now. Did you think that it was maybe not real? Was there anything that stopped you from purchasing?
um, it almost seemed too good to be true, to be frank with you, because I've been in so many encounters and so many situations around the world. Really, I probably didn't take it as serious as I should have. I probably thought of it as more of a toy or more of a nuisance
Mm-hmm.
that wouldn't be there if I needed it. It really was a combination of having remembered that little scene in the movie where he showed all of the things that the defender could do.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that and then I coupled with years, which I have now subsequently spent in self-defense open hand and in quite a number of cases in different countries, totally non-military type situations, just street situations. Wish I had had a tool like that. And then with Oklahoma, they have really gone big with this open carry thing with handguns. And everyone around me is just seems to have this bizarre notion that all is well if they have a gun with them and a gun is an end all. And I'm just actually I've gone the opposite direction now on handguns, and I believe that with so many people believing that that's their best defense in most situations that I've run into in the world. Not all, but most. A lethal solution wasn't always the best solution. So
Mm-hmm.
when I started thinking about the defender and I started thinking about the pummeling capability and how that you could basically you could marry it to your open hand techniques. So whatever I'm used to doing with my hands, whether it's a hammer blow, whether it's a strike to the ear, whether it's a chin strike or whatever, I could have the defender with me, keep it in my day planner, keep it
Mm-hmm.
in my pocket, and at the same time have a weapon that was very near lethal at the same time. That's kind of how I ended up there.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. We were just discussing before the show that you're a minister as well. So you could even have it in the Bible.
Well, actually, I've thought about that. I carry a Bible. A lot of places I go, I could put it. You're right. It's a thin piece of plastic, and I was just fixing to go online here and get some of the other ones that aren't quite as. I was demonstrating that thing to myself the other day. I mean, literally just about an ounce of pressure to your head, and you can really hurt yourself. So,
Oh yeah.
I was. You're right. Though you can put it in your day planner, your Bible, your pants pocket, your purse, whatever.
Yeah, not because I invented the darn thing, but I certainly do love the tool. It's a wowie. I've been living with it since 2004, so 10 years. and
Right.
watching people, and it's amazing how much damage it can do, even when we're not trying to do damage with it. It still
Yes.
seems to bite the heck out of you. It's a reasonable tool if people are going to
Yes.
be pain compliant at all. It certainly gives you some options to slow them down and give them to rethink about trying to mess with you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. The now let's just talk about your background a little bit. You've been in lots of foreign countries, and you've been almost kidnapped, shot at, um, uh, um, fights. Why don't you just talk just what you can talk about at any rate a little bit about your background?
I mean, it's just for some of the international travels or some
Yeah,
of the encounters.
you were in tough areas, and so you.
Well, I was in, I've got two or three that just really stand out. I was in Peshawar, just outside of Peshawar, Pakistan in 2001. This is just a few months before the 9/11 attack,
Right.
and I was in a very, very remote, very rough area in Pakistan, right near the Afghan border. And I was in 2001. I was still somewhat naive about the true deep hatred that a lot of the Muslims had for just Americans, just in general,
Hmm.
just the general hatred. Just wasn't quite used to that. So I was the horn sounded for the prayers for everyone to bow in front of the mosque, and I was real near a mosque, and the sound was just driving me insane. Literally, it was just horrible. I grabbed my hands like this, covered my ears, and I mean the instant that I did, I was abducted. It was that fast. I mean, less than 1 second. I honestly believe it was less than 1 second. Two men grabbed me. Of course, I was in the perfect position, and I highly recommend I'll never do this, and don't ever do this in a foreign country. Let's cover your ears like this,
Right.
because both guys on each side grabbed an elbow and an ankle, and because they had like an AK-47 and a machete on each of them, and they were some kind of military whatever. I don't know what they were, but I was more or less arrested for um, violating some religious thing for not bowing. But I mean, it just happened so fast. Boom. Uh, really fast.
Hmm.
What surprised me was the speed of which I was standing there 1 minute, and then just seconds later, I'm being hauled off and thrown in a makeshift jail.
Hmm.
That was just one. Um, One night we were Caracas, Venezuela, and Caracas is, you can go out into Caracas and have some wonderful dining experiences. There are a lot of beautiful places to go there. There's some nice people to see, but at night, I just don't. It's one of those cities where there's so many millions of people, you just really shouldn't get out. Well, I was with a guy that was somewhat of a travel novice, and he kind of, I guess he thought of it as more like his home city,
Hmm.
and he got sick and he had to go to a pharmacy. Well, if you go to a pharmacy in Caracas, Venezuela at 10 o'clock at night, you're going to be standing up next to basically a painted brick wall with a little
Little
peep
window.
door about a
Yep.
square, yeah.
Yep.
And then you knock on it, ring the bell, and then the person will come to the window, and you tell them what you need, and then they'll serve you through the window. Well, we're staying there, lights on, bright white wall, and the paint all around us just started flecking, just like it was like I was in some scene in a movie where the paint started popping off the walls. I had my back to the wall, and it started falling out in front of me, and I'm like, it took me about, seemed like an eternity,
To
probably
figure
a
out
half a second to figure
somebody
out
shooting at you.
that these were bullets that
Yeah.
were hitting the concrete, and the paint was flicking off and going a foot this direction, and these were, and it, and I never did see a gun, I never heard a gun, I never heard anything until about probably maybe 1 to 3 seconds later, and I
Hmm.
mean there was bullet damage everywhere. Neither one of us got hit. And it was some guys that had come by in a truck that had just lowered their sights on us and just unloaded everything they had and miraculously missed us, just in that one experience. Of course, defender wouldn't have done a lot of good at that point, but it was further testimony to just how serious being away from home is, being
Mm-hmm.
out at night, being out where you really need to have that guard up at all times. And if I had been more, I was more or less aware of my surroundings right in front of me, which I normally, watch that 20-foot or 21-foot rule and whatnot. These guys were a lot further away, so I just wasn't thinking about marauders, zipping down the road with automatic gunfire.
Yeah, people do
And
the
just,
damnedest things, don't they?
yes, sir.
What the hell? Thank God they couldn't shoot. They say with gangbangers, it's better not to move when they're shooting at you because they can't hit you anyway. They can't aim. So it's better not to even move. In your case, that was probably true too.
Probably true. I just stood, and then I ducked as soon as I hit the ground, hit the deck as soon as I could. Got my buddy to hit the ground. That was his last international trip. He never took another international trip after that.
Well, that's probably a good reason not to in many cases. You do get a lot of people out there that are extremely naive, in foreign countries, and that's
Yes.
not to mean that every foreign country has got all these problems, but frankly, you're on their turf, and they're like reef sharks. They know you're there, and we just kind of sort of taken everything in with the awe and are a little bit awestruck sometimes. I don't think I am, but I used to be at one time, I'm sure. But
Right.
I'm usually system high everywhere I go outside my house, unfortunately. But that's
Yep.
kept me alive and probably kept you alive too in
Yes,
those
sir.
cases. Now, so I think we all agree that it's an ugly world out there, and even here in the U.S., there's more and more violence occurring. I mean, look at the knockout games and the stuff that isn't getting reported, which is a little scary. But there's lots of people that, for whatever reason, want to do some violence on us, and I think a defender offers a great opportunity. I mean, defender's going to be no good if somebody gets you from behind and you don't realize it. Okay, but when you get switched on, if you can get that in your hand, then I think you have a more than ample opportunity to discourage people. And
Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely.
so okay, so you saw the movie, the Goats movie, and you went online and you took the chance to order this thing, but then you decided to become an instructor. So tell me how you decided to want to do that.
Well, I kept watching the videos. I watched a number of the videos, and I watched a training video, and I just kept thinking about what I have been starting to teach people. And as you know, I've been an instructor just for a couple of years, and quite frankly, just recently, literally in the last month, have I really geared up my self-defense teaching. What I had told my wife a number of years ago was that I had seen things and experienced things that were so foreign to the American mindset that I believed that that type of living was coming to America.
Mm-hmm.
So I had told her that by the year 2014 or 2015 or 2016, the America that we grew up in, the Andy Griffith America, would not be the same America, and that once we started leaving our home, anytime, day or night, children or not with children, with family, go to a movie, it was going to be a different world, and we were going to have to be engaged in that world like we were going into a third world country. So with that mindset taking hold in me, it has really become very important for me to be able to offer something in between carrying a gun on you at all times and being totally reliant on and naive. It's kind of like wearing a seatbelt. They say that drivers that wear seatbelts in cars have lower accident rates because they're reminded that they're in a moving projectile. Well, if I carry a defender with me and I make it part of my life, then that helps me be on. That helps
Mm-hmm.
me be aware. And awareness is your absolute first rule of self-defense. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many situations where you won't even be a victim if you don't break that first rule. And if you don't break the first rule, then you eliminate a lot of your trouble right there alone. So just simply knowing that you can have a tool like the Defender that can be carried in the purse, carried in your pocket, carried in your day planner, I believe is going to help remind people we're living in a dangerous world. We're living in a new era, and we all have to be on guard. We have to be on guard in the movie theater. We have to be on guard going to and from church. We have to be on guard at all times now, in my opinion, once we leave home.
Yeah, and I even think then you got home invasion now too. You throw that onto the heap, you know?
Well, that's exactly right. You see, because here we live on a lake, 10 acres, quiet property. Our gate is 1,000 feet from the road.
Hmm.
And I kid you not 2 nights ago, I had just laid down in bed. My wife came running in there and said, "Gary, there's someone out behind the house." I said, "Honey, we're on a lake. We're 20 miles from downtown Tulsa. There's 1,000 feet of beach out there. There's nobody outside the house." She said she went back out there with my high intensity light. I should have jumped up then, but she ran out with a light, and she heard a man kick a dog and say, "Shut up." And our neighbor's dogs were barking, and I ran out and the dogs were barking. And so we're certain there was someone there. So that gave us, even more, like you said, even more concern about prowlers and predators that are just out, just looking for things, looking to steal, and you may get in their way. And I'm learning, and this is what I learned from a lot of international travel. When you get, a lot of times, you're just in you're just in the wolf's way.
Hmm.
There's nothing personal. We Americans haven't been used to this. With the people that I encountered in these third world countries, I was just a slab of meat. There was no emotion. There was no hatred. Well, in America, we're so used to building emotions from 1 to 10 and then setting off the trigger. These people just live in a state where they can go to a 10.
Hmm.
And we're not used to that. And so, like you say, with home invasions and things like that, we have to be more prepared at all times.
Yeah, the my house is full of weapons. I'm the unusual individual. I've got weapons on every wall, everywhere. It's like an armory in here with knives and things, but that's what I teach and the way I live. But
Sure.
I
Yeah.
have noticed that when people get a defender, I always try to encourage them to put it in their hand as soon as they walk out of the house, if that's at all possible. And it's a
Mhm.
reminder that you're going out into, an unsettled area, and it brings as
Exactly.
you pointed out, their awareness comes up. And I don't know if you got a chance to see that podcast, the four laws of violent attack yet. It's up on the site. I got it up the other day, but basically the first law of a violent attack is you're at the right place at the wrong time. You didn't use your awareness skills. You didn't do your situational
Right.
awareness. Where am I? Where's the threat? Why am I here? Do I really want to go down that road? Do I really want to go, do this? And is this a smart thing to go do? But just like you say, that's the first rule. And if you just exercise that, 90%
Yes.
of anything that you would ever run into is gone. You're just
Yes,
not
sir.
there. And so I
Exactly right.
completely applaud that. And that you understand that, and hopefully our listeners stop and think about that too. That's good. So anyway, now you ended up getting a tool, and I think you bought the instructor's program right off the bat, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I was going online to see about buying the tools, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to be putting together a pretty sizable order either tonight or tomorrow. Um,
God bless. Thank
and
you.
when
God
yeah,
bless.
I've already showed it to my grandson, and I've already showed it to my wife, um, and I really haven't started teaching it to anyone just yet.
Hmm.
We should be having some classes here in the next week or so. But yeah, the night that I went online, I went ahead and I had been to your site several times before.
Hmm.
Okay, and I had, again, it was kind of taking some time to sink in that somewhere between just teaching people about awareness and so forth, that the number of occasions that even I had wished I had had some type of weapon that had more of a sting to it than just using my hands,
Right.
and yet not a gun, not a not resorting to a gun. So when I went online and saw that opportunity, I thought, wow, what a wonderful way for me to incorporate a non-lethal tool into my arsenal of training, because my arsenal of training starts with awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what better way for me to teach awareness for people than to go ahead and be an instructor for the Defender product and teach people about being aware in the first place. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you're aware in the first, I really believe if you're aware in the first place and you take that tool out, you already will probably greatly enhance your chances of never being attacked.
We've had a guy in England who purchased one, and it got to him, and before he could even look at the DVD, he just stuck it in his pocket and went out to the pub. And later that night, he was coming out of the pub, a little tuned up, I imagine, and two guys were going to mug him. So he pulled it out, and he actually, I got one here, you can't see me, but he actually held it so that the bulbulous end was in his palm of his hand, and his two fingers were down the handle itself and the pummel sticking out. It almost looked like a gun in some fashion, and
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
pointed it at them. And they looked at that, and they looked at that, and they decided they didn't know what that was, but they didn't want any part of him, and off he went. And you just
Yeah.
think about how cool that is in its own right. Is that, gosh, you scared people away without even doing anything. That's pretty cool. So there's some interesting stuff with that. Now, um, and before I forget this, you might want to take a look at. There's two videos. There's if you're going to start teaching, and you want to increase your empty hand aspect about things. So look at the Be Real series. The Be
Okay.
Real series, I got started on that because of a challenge from my teacher saying if you only had 2 hours to teach somebody to survive the most violent attack that you can think of, what would you teach them? And
Yeah.
I turned that philosophy over to my group, and we went through. I mean, we've got hundreds upon, and every martial artist has hundreds upon hundreds of techniques available to them. But what would you teach? And you
Right.
had to do that. And so the Be Real series actually came out of that. And
Okay.
trying to boil everything down, excuse me, to its simplest in a form that somebody doesn't need a lot of muscle memory, they don't need a lot of practice, and so that's a good series. But um,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and we always try to tell everybody we are the weapon. Doesn't matter what gets in our hands, we are the weapon.
Right.
And then, you're
Right
starting
here.
exactly. You're starting to really embody that to being a non-martial artist. I'm trying to give you some kudos there that you're starting to
Right.
realize. Unlike a lot of martial artists, they feel, or like the handgun guys, that this handgun is me. It's my defense. Well, if it jams, or you don't have it, or in fact you run out of ammo because you shot wildly and crazy, now what? And I
Hmm.
smile and say that empty or non-functional handgun makes an awful good improvised defender. Let me tell you. Yeah, you've got a trigger guard, right, that you can capture a
Yeah.
finger into, just like our digit capture holes. You've got lots of
Yeah.
little nooks and crannies that you can apply pressure on somebody with.
Yeah.
If you have a front sight post at all, it makes a good thing to poke into tissue and up noses and in ears, and so having the concept of a defender and how you work with that, a empty or jammed and non-functional weapon makes an incredibly good improvised defender. Um,
It's true.
you probably hadn't thought of that, but it makes you look at them differently now. Um, I used to
Right.
teach an M16 class, from my previous world, and I still do, as a matter of fact. An M16 or an A4 nowadays has a front sight post that you can hook in the necks and bring them down and whirl them around, and I'm a just marvelous tool. In between the groin, you hook up. Oh yeah, it's good stuff. And even magazines have a nice edge to them. They can use a great defender on a magazine, and yet they have a nice edge that you can come in and get a digit capture on. So there's lots of possibilities with all of these. You are the weapon and stuff. Now,
Right.
in Oklahoma, God bless them to be able to have open carry. Oh my gosh, I think I want to move to Oklahoma now. But out here in California, we can't. You can't even transport your weapon now. I mean, you can't get to the firing range legally with a weapon.
Oh,
I mean, you got to take two cars. One car has the ammo, and the other car has the weapon. And think that out. I mean,
man.
that's just crazy out here. And so, but the case I'm making is that there are times in one's self-defense that a handgun certainly is the right answer. For that standoff distance, like that guy in the backyard, you don't know what he's got. And a defender is really like a last resort, so to speak. I mean, they're up close and personal. You got danger close. And
Right, right.
on the flip side of that, if you have to go to court, you could say, hey, I wasn't the aggressor. He had to come into my space and he tried to injure me. And I merely defended myself. And, he had to get within 3 feet of me to use this thing. So, I mean, if he didn't want to get hurt, he shouldn't have been within 3 feet of me, or in this case, on top of me. What business did he have to do that? He or she, actually. So that's my chapter and verse there. So now, talk a little bit. You went through a self-defense certification program called Cobra. Um,
Oh, yes, Cobra is the most recent uh, um, product that I'm going to be working with. Real happy. It's Peter Sutton's series, and we've just become a Cobra authorized training center for the Cobra self-defense system.
mhm.
Yeah.
Are you going to introduce
Uh,
the Defender to your Cobra instructor, maybe?
well, I'm gonna contact Chris. I'm gonna be with Chris for a weekend in about a month. With the Cobra, the Cobra system has a curriculum. The students actually get a manual,
Hmm.
and we commit when we do that we won't deviate from the manual. However, I'm also an instructor with a self-defense company, and so I'm going to be contacting Chris that either with my Cobra students after class
Sure.
or before class, that I will bring in the the Defender product.
Hmm.
It's needless to say that with any of my students that I'm talking to prior to becoming a student, whether it's a Cobra student for using the Cobra curriculum, which is just a curriculum,
Hmm.
uh, the Defender is going to be a part of my whole rounded teaching circuit. So if people only have a few hours of time, and I've had a lot of business people that have called me that just want maybe 2 hours of training.
Hmm.
I can assure you I'm going to be giving a businessman 2 hours of training. The Defender is going to come up
Hmm.
because so many people that travel, the Defender will be probably the showpiece, the showcase of any training that I'll be giving people.
That's interesting because I always say it takes about 20 minutes to get somebody spun up, but they're pretty significant. I mean, it takes a lot of
Yeah.
effort to get to somebody, even with just 20 minutes of training with a Defender. Um, yeah, it certainly is a neutralizer, that's for sure. It gives them a
Yeah.
much better edge, I think, than not. And it'll be fun to see what your instructors, and I can understand them not wanting anybody to deviate from their um, curriculum. That is probably the most difficult thing to do in a martial arts system, is to try to get people to toe a line and not go crazy and add a bunch of stuff that doesn't work.
Well, now, yeah, and I'm not the business, that I have in Tulsa, in the Sand Springs area. Again, I'm also authorized with the self-defense training system, and Damien, he's very, open um, with what we can do and how we can improvise. And there's so much improvisation. I mean, we'll show how to use a chair.
Hmm.
We show how to use chairs. I mean, because in real life, it's muddy, dirty. There's chairs around you. There's obstacles. There's bricks. There's rocks. There's
Sure.
furniture. You know, um, so in my personal curriculum and training, anytime I'm with people, I'm really just after a week of being exposed really in depth to the Defender. Personally, I'm going to be making the Defender again a very integrated part of my self-defense awareness and teaching in general.
Hmm.
Now, when it comes time to teach a 14-week Cobra Academy, I'm going to stick right with the
Oh,
curriculum.
sure, and you
And,
should.
that
Yeah, and you
in
should.
the curriculum, I'm going to stick with the curriculum. But again, before and after, and in other training sessions that are not specifically Cobra specific training sessions, I am convinced that the defender is going to be a big core of what I'm going to be teaching. I did notice, Peter, if I can deviate for a moment,
Oh yeah.
that when I was reading some of the bios of some of your other instructors, I was noticing that a lot of these guys, and of course, I felt very humble to even be, uh, to see the list of people that have the military pedigree and have the years and years and years of training. It almost was to me like a lot of these guys that have been around violence for 15, 20, or 30 years and have taught everything have been exposed to the defender and have seen what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
That is, they have seen that a gun is not an end all. They've seen that there are a lot of times when an open hand situation against a knife, you've got big, big trouble.
Yep.
Well, the defender isn't a knife, but the defender is more of a, what they call that thing, where
An
it makes
equalizer.
the equalizer.
Yeah.
It's more of an equalizer. So what I've noticed is a lot of these instructors have made a turn that I believe I just made it soon, and that is that the defender type product can in fact be a wonderful, wonderful tool that needs to be in the hands of, quite frankly, millions of Americans.
Oh, I agree. I would love that too. It's been a mission of mine to try to get this technology out there and tool out there, and yeah, and I think for the martial artists, it's interesting. You come at it with one point of view. I almost think that the martial artists are far more skeptical of this tool
Yes.
than
Yes.
a general purpose person, and
It,
they buy it. Like, I mean, one of the top guys that started buying stuff from me, his name is John Inger, and he's one of our instructors, and he's a retired police officer, in a big martial arts way, and taught Kubotans, if you know what those are, and just all this
yes. Right.
stuff, and batons, and
Right.
on and on and on and on, and he saw it, and he said, "Wait a second, this is this a joke?" And
Yeah.
has the
Hmm.
same knee jerk that, wait a second, this is what, and so he took a shot. I mean, I do a
Right.
money back guarantee. If you don't like it, doesn't say it doesn't do anything for you. Send the thing back, and I'll get it out to other people. It's not a problem. But yeah, he was really wowed by it. And then I said, as I usually do, don't trust me. Don't believe a darn thing I say. Prove it to yourself. And so he ordered some other ones, and boy, he got enamored by it. So he's been a big convert, and I asked him to write up reviews and stuff of all of my stuff, as a matter of fact. And so these guys are probably harder sells than you are, um, and yet they come around to it. And I think the good thing about a defender is it kind of sort of fits inside whatever you normally do. All the artists, including yourself, have certain things that you prefer to do, like a hammer fist or whatever. And this thing just accents that to beat the band.
Yes. Again, when I saw some of the instructors, and I realized these are men that are a lot of them were in their 40s and 50s and 60s that have experienced a lot of things in life and have now balanced a lot of wisdom with their training. I'm not a martial artist. I'm just a guy that traveled millions of miles on airlines and found myself in very dangerous places and wished I had had the defender.
Mm-hmm.
And so, having seen the defender and having read their stories, it occurred to me that, like you said, sometimes maybe your martial artist might be almost your biggest enemy with this thing, because a regular guy like me that has no martial arts training saw this and went, "This is an excellent thing that needs to be in the hands of my wife. This needs to be in the hands of my 13-year-old grandson. It needs to be in the hands of everyone that I know, to change their life."
Mm-hmm. So Gary, you said you started teaching your grandson. Tell me a little about your 13-year-old grandson. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, like I said, my 13-year-old grandson, he's a very gentle-spirited young man. He's never had any fights. He's never been in any trouble. He's not a martial artist. He's just a good kid. And I had been watching this bullying stuff, and there had been a fight breakout at a school basketball game just a week before, and so he's been asking a lot of questions, and I've tried to teach him, to run from violence anytime possible and whatnot. But with some of my time with him, the one thing I could construe to him, besides just old timey wisdom, was start teaching him a little bit about self defense. Well, when I
Hmm.
got this product in this week, I showed him the Defender and just started teaching him some of the basic things of having the Defender with you, and how that just a tool like this can be a real equalizer in situations. Just started teaching it to him. That's all.
I love the tool when people start punching or kicking at you, and you just hold it up and let them run into it. Oh
Yeah.
shoot! Oh shoot! I mean, all you're doing is, hey, don't hurt me. Like I'm an old guy, don't hurt me. And I can't. I go teach at the Marine Corps from time to time. I'm connected to the Marine Corps martial arts program, a subject matter expert for them. So I'm one of the few civilians that are allowed to actually go teach. They call it MCMAP, but I don't do that. What I end up doing is going as a guest to teach what I consider Core Plus material, which is kind of like if you
Yeah.
think about your Cobra. This is a Core Plus type of. It's a plus up, that you end up teaching. But at any rate, at one of them, one of the instructor types really doubted this thing. But he had a 12-year-old son. And I said, let me have 20 minutes with your 12-year-old son. He's taught him all kinds of stuff, and they play with each other. I said, give me 12, give me 30 minutes or 20 minutes with your 12-year-old son, and then you go try to do whatever you normally go do. And I think the result will be completely different. Sure enough, boy, the 12-year-old son beat the heck out of the dad with this tool, and the dad was and he's an McMap instructor, and knows
Yeah.
knows this stuff in and out, and is very competent in his own right. But boy, it really leveled the playing field from the age and
Yes.
experience world. Doesn't mean
Absolutely.
you can't get it taken away from you. Doesn't mean you can't lose it or anything else in the middle of this thing. But they just don't know what it is half the time. And I
Right.
always ask for the biggest, strongest Marine and get him out there. I said, now choke me. And the famous, infamous choke me scene out of the Goats movie, and and they start choking me, and I say, and they don't really choke you because they're trying to be nice, and I always tell them that, Jesus Marine, if this is the best choke you've got, our enemies have nothing to fear from the United States Marine Corps,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then they finally get that going, which is just what you want. You want all those muscles in the arm flexing. You just take that point and you go, and they're flying away from you. How do you do that?
Yeah.
And it's the
It's a,
power of the tool. It's amazing.
it is.
It certainly isn't me. I mean, even though I've had many, many years, I've been, 54 years now in the arts. But so anyway, when you start to teach these kids, it's going to be a real interesting thing. And I've taught some kids, no question, but I haven't made it a thrust to do that. And it'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see what your experience is with them, for sure.
Well, first of all, I'm going to be very like he has a younger brother, because I don't even want his younger brother to know I own one,
Right.
because his younger brother, he wouldn't be able to mentally uh, handle the product
Sure.
without hurting someone, because it
Sure.
is much more dangerous than it looks like.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm going to be very, very careful. I wasn't planning on teaching this to teenagers, although there might be, especially we just had an abduction out here recently, and
Ooh.
everyone is thinking about abductions. Um, you know, 13, 14-year-old girls, I'm going to see how this goes with, and there's a center here where I'm going to be doing some volunteer training for some of the women that have been sexually abducted.
Hmm.
And I really believe that this can be a great tool that these
Oh
women
yeah.
could, because they're not going to, I know that most of them are not going to be comfortable carrying a firearm. And again, firearms might not have even solved their problems in the first place. Whereas reaching into their purse when they're going out to the car at night and having a defender can be, again, such a great equalizer. So,
Right. Right. And I kind of swam my thinking around a bit. the Defender 2, I should have grabbed one whilst I was up,
Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah, I'll put up a Defender 2 picture, but a Defender 2 is a really vicious item, and it is truly a no nonsense. I don't take any prisoners and I eat the wounded, kind of tool. And
right.
I can tell you this: if my girls were to carry anything, I'd rather have them carry a Defender 2, because if
Ah,
anybody's going to come get them, you don't want to be nice. You want to extract as much damage as humanly possible onto that person to get them to stop any thoughts or aggression towards you. And so I've kind of reversed my thinking on women and defenders.
yes.
Give them a thing that has some real bite to it, no matter what they do. Because
Hmm.
they're not apt to
Absolutely.
take. I mean, if we go to a family outing and our uncle gets drunk and you need to move him out of the situation and he's paying compliant, certainly a Defender 1 has no problem doing that. And you wouldn't want to use a Defender 2 and tear the guy apart. Um, and I walking away around to a story here. I took a shoplifter down once, quite the story. And I always exchange my personal tools with my Marine Corps students when they go overseas, so they have to bring that tool back. They're not going to disappoint Sensei, and it actually psychologically really helps them out there, believe it or not. Anyway, one of the tools of this personal, this one particular, now he's in Sergeant Major, but was a Defender, was a Spec Ops 2, one of the more just no nonsense, low profile, eat 'em up tool. And I ended up taking the shoplifter down, and I'm a big guy, but this guy was like 6'3", 6'4", probably 350 pounds. He was a big guy, Jesus. And he went down like anything. I mean, it was a piece of cake to take this guy out. And I had quite the audience watching the whole thing. And then the cops came, and I'm holding him down with one hand. And they're looking up the hill because it's up the side of this hill. And they're wondering, how the hell is this guy? And they thought I was a cop. And I had this guy, literally pinned out for a good 20 or 30 minutes. Um, and I finally said, "Hey, would somebody come up here and take this guy over, please?" And, "Well, you're not a cop?" "No, I'm a civilian. Get up here. Come do your job."
That's
But
funny.
unfortunately,
Right.
this guy was bleeding everywhere because this tool just chewed him a new rear end. And I'm looking, I've got a hold of him, and I'm going, gosh darn it, I wished I'd had a Defender 1. I did so much damage to this guy, and I tried not to do any damage to him, and it was just inherent in the tool, you know?
Yeah,
And
it
that's why
was.
I
Yeah.
got thinking too, hey, some 13-year-old girl gets attacked by a group of guys to do whatever. You don't want her to be very nice. You want to do some
Nope.
damage really quickly and make somebody stop and think twice about touching that person.
That's right. That's right.
We used to
It,
teach a women's self-defense class, and our symbol was a rose, beautiful to look at, but don't touch the son of a gun. It's got thorns all over it. And
uh-huh.
in that embodiment, if you stop and think about that, that's why I think if you start to teach, women's self-defense stuff, get them to get two tools. Get a Defender around the house, possibly a Defender 1, and when they walk outside, have that Defender 2 in their hands.
That's great advice. I'll definitely put that in my teaching.
Well, think about it
Absolutely.
anyway. When you make an order, get a Defender 2 and play with that, and you're going to go, oh my gosh, this thing is crazy, you know. And that still isn't the most aggressive tool we've got, but I can tell you, in literally fractions of seconds, you can make mincemeat out of this person in front of you, you know.
Right.
That element of surprise, they don't know what's happening. And you know what? I'm going to go get one. Give me 2 seconds. I can't stand it. Let me go grab one here. Defender 2, and you can't see it, but it's a fairly serious tool with sawtooth grabbing points and 3 particular points, and so you have a point no matter which way you want to gimbal your hand. Uh, Defender 2 is an incredible weapon. But you had a question. What was your question?
My question was, is for the average traveling executive or the traveling salesperson that's flying a lot and just going to the large cities that wants a Defender or wants a Defender product, which would be the product of choice for that would least likely get them too much attention at the security checkpoints.
Well, if they have to hand carry something on, our guppy is probably the least innocuous version. I think a guppy you could take anywhere with you, and yet it does a really good job. It was the first in the invention line, and
Okay.
but I have people carrying a Defender one on airplanes everywhere, and I dangle mine from my quick release lanyard and beg for somebody to ask me what it is. We have lots of different cover stories as to what they are. You may not know them, but one is a cooking tool, which it actually works like a cooking tool. It even has its own web address. Matter of fact, just for fun, let me type it in the Skype window. Do you know how to get to? Let me see here. See if I can do this. There we go. Yeah, let's see. Let's see if we got this going right. And you'll see this.
Because for me, the key is for the Defender is to be able to have it on you pretty much at all times.
If you just click on that link.
Well, it popped up and went away. So, but I'll click on it in a minute.
Okay. Well, basically, I sent you a link to an online site that we have for a cooking tool, and it actually works like a cooking tool. So it's a chef cooking tool. But people have come up with all kinds of different stories. I mean, it can be a chakra point massage tool. It can be a fish scaler, and everybody. It's a non-conductive high voltage cable bender. True.
Okay.
We actually had, and it works that way too. I mean, I'm an electrical engineer. Strangely enough, that's exactly what I use to separate high voltage cables if I'm around them at all, and so it works that way. So it's a lot. There's a lot of different things, and what I usually do too is I say if the tool gets confiscated from you for any reason, I'll replace it for no expense. So I'll send you another one.
Oh.
But I have engineers and I have Marines and stuff that, like I say, fly all over the world with this tool. Matter of fact, one was coming back from Australia, and it was in his backpack on an outside pocket that was kind of a web outside pocket where you stuff stuff in. And the guy looks down, he goes, "Wait a second, I know what that is." And this is sitting next to him on an aircraft coming back from us. He said, "That's a Defender. Is that what that is?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's what that is." He goes, "How did you get that on the airplane?" Well, just walk right on. They don't know what it is. And let's hope that keeps going, by the way. But a guppy, for example, absolutely innocuous. Shouldn't be any reason you couldn't walk on with that.
Right.
I imagine, though, in time. But a cook spoon, a wooden cook spoon, let me tell you, spoon foo. Once you understand how a Defender works, if you go into your kitchen and you get a cook spoon, oh my gosh, it works great. And the weight, the smacking, the curving, the stuff you can do with a cooking spoon is unbelievable. A wooden cooking spoon. And you smack them in the nose, and can smack them in the groin, and they just they don't know what's going on. So one day we might. As a matter of fact, I taught a famous defense attorney in L.A. spoon foo. I did it at a bar, and he got himself a spoon, and he took it everywhere, and he beat people up with that, showing them about spoons. And so it's really not just the Defender; it's the knowledge behind the Defender that can make a can opener, a wine opener. As a matter of fact, when you get used to this tool, you can go into your kitchen and then how you have a drawer full of different stuff to use for your kitchen cooking. Right. And I have students or people, I say, pick out something in there you don't think I can use to defend myself. And no matter what they come out with, based on a Defender, you can use some part of it to defend yourself. So kind of cool.
Right.
But
Yeah.
anyway, well, okie dokie, we'll bring this to a close. So you're gonna start to to start teaching this, and how are you
Yes.
going to get your students? I'm just curious. How are you going to get your students?
Well, again, I have no I do not have a martial arts school. I'm strictly advertising and teaching self-defense. So
Hmm.
we just put up our Facebook page, put up a Facebook page for the Cobra yesterday, and I'm going to be working on doing something with the Defender and with my just my basic self-defense. We'll probably be working on that the next couple of days. So we're going to be doing Facebook, and then I'm going to be setting up an email. Everybody that I run into, I run into a waiter or a waitress at a restaurant. I want to be getting her email address so I can start sending those people information and putting on my email thing. And then I'm going to be announcing Saturday classes and try to just get the word out, flyers,
Hmm.
ballpoint pens, and all kinds of stuff to have these little mini self-defense deals, for like 2 hours and bring the Defender into that, and then try to have enough Defenders to be able to sell to the people that want the different products.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So I'm
Now,
just doing a campaign, basically.
that's great. The I also did. There's a site that I have had for a long time, but it's called 101marketingpodcast.com. I just put up a video yesterday on how to make successful flyers. I'll make sure and send that link to you. Yeah, I'm going to have
Yeah.
it over on the instructor side too, because I try to get that PDF out to all the guys so that they're going to put out marketing materials, which is one of my fortes. They get a chance to do it right. So
Yeah, I was looking at, yeah, I saw one of your instructions and it gave an example of a bad flyer, which is very typical that you see. And then it had an example of the better wording and some of the best wording.
right,
And so, yeah, I'd probably refer back to some of that again as for some of the wording for these things. But I want
right.
to probably try to do 5 tiers of, uh, of horizontal marketing, uh, different ways to get the name and the idea out there
Right.
to everyone I can, at least in the Tulsa area, for that matter.
Well, good. Well, good. I look forward to having you back on the show here and on the podcast. We'll check in with you from time to time, see how you're doing there, Gary.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
All right. So I'm gonna stop recording and hang on a second, and I'll also
Okay.
have contact information up for you too. So if you'll hang on a minute, I'll stop the recording
All right.
and go from there. That was